So this is Jackie, and I'm here with Alex of Atreyu. We are inside Baltimore Soundstage now, so it's a little bit warmer for me. I've been kind of roaming around outside. Atreyu's been really going strong for decades now, which is not something I get to say a lot with bands of your genre or really bands in general because of how the music industry has really
Yeah.
changed. So, what do you attribute to your band's longevity?
Well, I think first and foremost, we're all good friends. And the formation of our band has been our friendship. Uh, and we write honest music that I think some people can connect to. And I think that's a powerful thing in this day and age. And we're only a little pretentious and contrived. So I think people connect to that, just genuine friends playing music together. I think it's a easy thing to sell.
And you don't take yourself too seriously, so that I'm sure helps as well.
I have my days. I have my days.
I think we all do. I think that's fair. Last month, you guys released In Our Wake, your seventh studio album. How is it an evolution of sound since Suicide Notes and Butterfly Kisses? Like, let's go way back.
Um, I mean, man, things have changed just so much since then. We were 19 or less when we wrote Suicide Notes. I'll be 37 next year. So, or in January. So, miles and miles have changed since then. But I think we still sound like Atreyu. You know what I mean? Like various records will kind of lean maybe a little bit more aggressive, and then some may lean a little bit more melodic or experimental like this. But we still kind of always have an underlying theme or underlying sound.
Why was it important to get back with John Feldman, who is like the kind of consummate producer and not just of one single genre? I think he really branches out.
We had worked with John years ago. I think before he had started working with more of the heavier bands. I think we're one of the first, we're the first like legit, real heavy band he had worked with. Because the Used, I don't consider the Used like super heavy. Um, Not as a diss. I love the Used, and the records John did with the Used are awesome. And one of the reasons we worked with him the first time. So the time away from John, I mean, was cool because we got to use the things that we've learned from him. Because we didn't really know anything about writing records, and we went to John and we learned some stuff, and then we went and applied it on our own. And I think now, it was fun to go back and work with him as adults more and be able to bring more to the table.
Did he allow you to experiment? Was it his idea? Was it your idea, kind of to move things in a little bit of a different direction?
I think we thought we were experimenting, and then John was like, "Nah, we're gonna do this." So we were already kind of taking it one direction, and John was like, "Yeah, that's cool, but then like let's push it up and try it. Whatever you're doing, then just push it up to a 12 and try it at that." And that's why you go to him. You go to him to be pushed. We already wanted to be pushed. We wanted to test our comfort zones and our abilities, and then you know having someone like him who will really help you test it is an awesome thing.
I, Speaking of pushing things, some fans have kind of have their, every fan is going to have their own opinion when a band does things what's considered different, even though it's not vastly different. A couple months ago, I spoke with Aaron Gillespie about the new Under Oath album, and his response was basically, "I don't care if you don't like it, listen to the one that you do, the album that you do like." So, how do you react to fans when they're like, "I just go back to do you like Suicide Notes 2.0?"
You know what? Like I think that people who say that, man, how can I put it? Like if you're living so far back on the curse or something like the Suicide Notes, then like you're probably not even really that much of a fan of our band. You like one or two records, and that's cool. Go listen to those records and enjoy it. I don't think that's the person who comes out and sees the trade shows. The person who goes and bitches about this sounding that way or another, especially like when you look at you know, Suicide Notes came out, and that's basically everyone's first exposure to our band. Then we put out The Cursed, and we're starting to gain momentum. The Cursed is very, people would call it metalcore. At the time, that wasn't a thing, so it was whatever that was then. It was very aggressive. Death Grip, we start to get more experimental. We start to do stuff like The Theft, uh, mixing in Brandon's vocals in different parts of the songs, having more melody. Then you go to Lead Sails, and the time between Lead Sails and Death Grip is years. Even just releases, the writing periods were as far apart as they could possibly be. So then we do Lead Sails, and Lead Sails is a giant evolution. It's a much more melodic record. There's metal, it's there, but it's much more grandiose and less like speed thrash metal. Congregation of the Damned, then I think kind of somehow wades backwards a little. Like it wades a little towards Death Grip on the needle, if you will. And then by the basically the needle just keeps moving back and forth. So if you if it shocks people the transition from Long Live to this record, I don't know how long they were with us because I think the transition from Death Grip to Lead Sails was much more jarring and much more of a big deal. And I remember doing it and people freaking the fuck out. You know what I mean? So, you know, it's all relative to just if people like us, they don't say that shit. And it's people who maybe don't really like us that much, you know what I mean? But now the internet has a platform for everything. So it's all of a sudden this person might look like a fan, but it's actually just like a troll or someone who liked one record you did and maybe they're just a fan of that one record, which is totally okay. But we're artists; we have bodies of work. You know, I don't just use the same pen every time on the same paper. It changes. You know.
I appreciate that metaphor. So, how do you go about crafting a set list then that allows fans to hear the songs that they want to hear, allows you to play the songs you want to play, and is cohesive?
We do it in the most politically correct way to please our audience, which is 90% of the set list to 95% of the set list is from like Spotify plays and things like that. We go look and see what the fans want to hear because we go if they're listening to these songs, these are the Atreyu songs that they want to hear. So maybe we'll look at the top 30 of those songs, something like that, top 20, I don't know, and kind of pick and choose, you know, 7/10 most of the set list that way. And then an extra third of it is maybe like songs that we really want to play for whatever reason, or we just got a fucking idea that we have to play this song, something like that.
So you mentioned Spotify and having just released new music. Do you focus more on the Spotify plays or the tangible album sales or somewhere in between?
You know what? It's taken me a couple years to realize like I think I'm a really competitive person without realizing it. I don't want to be. It's not like good for your soul, and I don't realize I'm doing it. So I try not to focus on any of it anymore because it just pisses me off. It's never good enough. It's never what you want. Our Spotify stuff is flying through the roof like faster than it's ever been. It's really crazy right now, and I think like streams and stuff like that. Fortunately, unfortunately, I don't really have a vested interest in CDs or streams. Is the way of the future. So I think you can't. It's hard to. It's hard to say anymore. You know what I mean? Like it's just whichever way people can get their hands on our music, you know, is the best way. But it's a game changer. Spotify and all that.
Well, and I think it's smart to use that data as information for you.
Well, yeah, because people be like, "Well, why don't you play this song?" And they get a little pissy sometimes, and it's like because no one wants to hear that song but you, man. I'm sorry, like
Press play, you're fine.
yeah, it's like that was like a B side that didn't come out. That was like a bonus song that was given to Best Buy or something. Like I don't know, man. Like I'm sorry.
It's a good obscure choice,
It's
but
a
not
cool
tonight.
Song. It's a cool song. I like it too, but we just can't. Like we would have a 500, not 500, but a 70 song set.
It would be a long night. Speaking of Aaron from Under Oath before, and you also teamed up with M Shadows of Avenged Sevenfold. How did those partnerships come about for Superhero?
You know, we've known Matt and Aaron for a long time. We've known Matt longer, I think, even than Aaron. Playing shows with Avenged when we were both kids, basically. I mean, I remember playing in a room that was twice the size of this room that we're in right now, with us and Avenged on like the docks in San Pedro, where we live. It's kind of like a real tough area. And they never had shows there, and I don't know what that room was in, but for some reason we played a show there. It was like us and Avenged Sevenfold, and just our friends and like wives. Like no, we didn't have fans. No one gave a shit.
Those were the fans.
Yeah, those were the fans. Like it was awesome. I remember Matt's wife would sing a song with them back then, because she screamed on like one of their records. It was cool, man. It was a different time, you know. Under Oath, I want to say like Aaron was trying to tell me this, and because I don't want to say if it's the wrong information, so I'm sorry if it's the wrong information. But I think like one of Under Oath's like first tours or bigger tours or like longer tours, so one of them, we're gonna take one of those, was with us, and I remember it because we loved their band. They're real nice guys, and you know, I remember one time we were out with them. And we were driving down this hill, maybe in Baltimore or Pittsburgh, or somewhere in between. We're going down a hill, and like they turned left, their van turned right, and their trailer kept going straight. It had broke loose somehow, and they didn't know, we didn't know, so we just watched their trailer go shooting down the street, and we chased it down in our van, and we caught up with it because they didn't even realize what had happened at first. So like that's weird, you know. So we've been friends with those guys for so long. Sorry about the tangent here. That it was like a natural choice. They're both fathers And that was the whole point of that song, was to have dudes that were dads write their own parts and convey their emotions and feelings in regards to that subject.
And I feel like in 2018, it's been such a rough year, but thinking about things about whether we are physically leaving someone behind or we're emotionally leaving someone behind, I think that it's a powerful message that can be both positive as well as a little bit dark. So it's an interesting take on things.
I think our band has always straddled the line of positive and dark. You know what I mean? I think in a lot of ways, our darkness is positivity. I mean, if you go back and read, especially like the first three records, like it's very dark music. It's not. There's nothing uplifting going on there. So, yeah, it's Look, I lost my train of thought there.
Food will do that to you.
Yeah, I see kind bars and I get excited. But yeah, I think that like that dichotomy and that kind of mix is fun, and that's kind of what we do. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, and are into that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? Or even if you look like, you know, you're talking about losing people, 2017, 2018. Obviously, we lost Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington. And if you, and I don't know how this is coming across, I don't know how I come across, but it's out of respect, and it's out of like, it's like kind of like fucking whoa. But if you read the lyrics to like any Linkin Park song, it's right there. It's right there. So for me, I'm lucky enough that this is my out that keeps me from going too far, going down a path of thinking that I can't, my mind won't let me get out of. And so this record, in a lot of ways, is about those dudes and about those things. And it was going through my head. You know, there's so many songs. There's a song, Safety Pin, that's kind of about it. There's even songs where, like, if Brandon had the idea, I won't get too much into which songs or what, but if, like, Brandon had an idea for a song, I would still be kind of thinking about those dudes and, like, those feelings in the back of my head, because it's such a big thing. And we wrote the record in 2 chunks. And each chunk was written around the time of each dude's passing, because they were like months or a year apart, and it's fucked up.
In fact, I went to the last show of Mike Shinoda last week. You know, watching the crowd sing the Chester's part in the end, and you see the fans weeping. And you're like, man, if we could just turn the camera, you know, in a different time. And I think music is just such a powerful tool.
Yeah, what's crazy is I think like there's lines in what is it, like Paper Castle is another song on a record that's basically about that, about those situations. And it's just like, you know, we would have held you up, we would have carried you, you know, if we'd known, you know, if you'd let us. And I think it's crazy that people with that problem can't always see it, what's right in front of them. But that's why it's a problem.
And music can be such a positive or such a great outlet. 2017, 2016 sucked. 2017 wasn't any better. 2018, we're not there. We're not done with it yet. But I feel like a lot of us are like pressing the fast forward button. So I know that myself included, and many young people, and I think people of many different ages, will turn to music when times get tough. What kind of music do you turn to listen to if you're having a rough day?
Man, you know, I've always listened to punk rock and hardcore. Those are the first musics that I was exposed to, and then I got into metal after. And I think metal is rad, but metal to me doesn't have the same like positivity in a way in a scene that hardcore especially does, and then punk rock, that community does too. Like the metal scene is its own fucking its own fucking thing. But to me, in punk rock and hardcore, there's that sense of community, you know what I mean? And there's that sense of like, we can get through this, or maybe like a positivity sometimes, even if it's fucking totally negative. Whereas I see metal sometimes as just like fucking, oh, that feels negative, but it's a good negative, if that kind of makes sense. So I think like coming up that way and thinking that way, man, I think, and it's hard for me because I can be real negative and I got some issues myself, but you know, when you realize that you're the master of your own destiny, young or old, and that you can control your perception of the situation, it changes everything. And it can be hard, and some days you can't rein in that mentality, but when you realize it, like, you know, that you have the control over it, it's powerful. And I think about bands that like I listen to, like, I mean, I'm just throwing random out, like H2O or something like that. Like H2O isn't telling you to like have a fucking pity party for your life. Right. You know what I mean? You know, even more like more obscure, not more obscure, like more classic bands like Youth of Today, like old hardcore bands, youth crew bands, like, it's about fuck, shit's hard, but let's push on. Let's get through this either together or by myself. We'll find a way. And I think that's something I think a lot of today's youth are going to need more and more because shit's just going to get harder. You see it in our current political and social climate. It's dog eat dog, and it's only going to get worse. I'm not going to raise my kids to be soft. They can have emotions, but the world's hard. You need to be self-sufficient and strong, and I like music that's like that too.
Speaking of music, what's next up for Treyu after this tour?
Oh man, we're going to jam this tour. We are going to go home for Christmas. Then we are going to go on Shiprocked with like every rad band in the world. Then we're going to go on a big European tour in February to March.
Well, stay tuned for much more from Treyu. This is Jackie. Thanks to Chorus FM and In the Key of Change.